Welcome to Project Management. In this video, I will talk about outsourcing and how to manage interorganizational relations. Outsourcing significant segments of project work to other companies is commonplace in today's world. Outsourcing is also called contracting or partnering. It's the process of transferring of business functions or processes such as customer support, IT, and accounting to other companies. These companies can be either domestic or foreign companies. For example, when you call your internet service provider to solve a technical problem, you are likely to talk to a technician in India or Romania. Apple works closely with manufacturers in China to manufacture iPhones and iPads. General Motors collaborates with battery suppliers LG Chem in South Korea to develop batteries for electric cars. Contracting project work has long been the norm in the construction industry, where firms hire general contractors who subcontract parts of the work when creating buildings and structures. There are many advantages of outsourcing project work. First, outsourcing can lead to cost reduction. This is true especially if the work can be outsourced offshore. Furthermore, the in-house overhead costs can be dramatically lowered. For example, you can hire 3 Indian software engineers for the price of 1 American software engineer. Furthermore, outsourcing can provide access to equipment that can accelerate completion of project tasks. Third, a company no longer has to keep up with technological advances. Instead, it can focus on developing a high level of expertise in their core competencies. Outsourcing will allow companies to enjoy flexibility. Organizations are no longer constrained by their own resources but can pursue a wide range of projects by combining their resources with talents of other companies. One of the disadvantages of outsourcing project work is that coordination problems can be caused by physical separation with people working in different buildings, different cities, or even different countries. Projects are more prone to interpersonal conflicts since the participants do not share the same values, priorities, and culture. Trust can be difficult to build. Another disadvantage is that trade and business secrets may be revealed. This can be problematic if the contractor also works for your competitor. Confidentiality is another concern, and companies have to be very careful when outsourcing processes like payroll, medical transcriptions, and insurance information. Furthermore, outsourcing is a political hot potato. Foreign outsourcing is perceived as a major cause of unemployment, and U.S. companies are under increasing pressure to keep jobs local. Apple has been criticized for their contractors' oppressive labor practices that led to multiple employee suicide cases in China. Outsourcing will also lead to loss of control and too much reliance on project partners. The project scope may be compromised if one partner fails to deliver. Therefore, cost should not be the only consideration when choosing who to outsource the projects. Watch this video about the last point. It was a news report about the 2011 earthquake in Japan that threatened the global supply chain. Once an organization decides to outsource project work, the project sponsor or project manager is responsible for developing a request for proposal, RFP. The responsible project manager will require input from all stakeholders connected to the activities covered in the RFP. The RFP will be announced to external contractors, vendors with adequate experience to implement the project. The most common error is to offer an RFP that lacks sufficient detail. This typically results in conflict issues, misunderstandings, legal claims, and ultimately, a dissatisfied customer. Here is a list of key points to keep in mind when creating a request for proposal. The summary of needs gives the background of the project and a simple description of the needs to be fulfilled. The statement of work details the scope and major deliverables of the project. Deliverable specifications describe the requirements and features. The specifications should be very comprehensive, so bid proposals from contractors can be validated and later used for control. The request for proposal needs to define the responsibilities of contractors and the customer. Who is responsible for what? What are the limits and exclusions, etc. The project schedule, milestones, project budget, and payment method should be specified, and they can be used to control and evaluate project progress. There are generally two different types of contracts: fixed price contracts and cost-plus contracts. Fixed price contracts agree on a price in advance and it remains unchanged. It's preferred in projects that are well defined with predictable costs and minimum risks. The contractor must use care when estimating cost. In a cost-plus contract, the contractor is reimbursed for all or some of the expenses incurred as the project progresses. Both types of contracts can include incentive clauses to reward superior performance or penalize inferior performance. The request for proposal can specify the necessary experience, skills, or qualifications of the staff who implement the project. The criteria used for selecting the project contractor should be clearly defined. Interested contractors respond to project request for proposal with written bid proposal. The proposal review committee will select the contractor who best meets the requirements. The selection criteria given in the request for proposal are used to evaluate which contractor is awarded the contract to implement the project. This table shows an example. The evaluation criteria like contractor qualifications, staff technical skills, understanding of terms and conditions, etc. are listed in the first column. The weights for the criteria are listed in the second column. The scores for two proposals, 1 and 2, are listed in the third and fourth columns, respectively. It seems proposal 1 has a higher weighted total, which makes it a winning proposal. Losing contractors should be given an explanation of the key factors that led to the selection of the winning contractor. Appreciation for their participation and effort should be acknowledged. There are two different ways of managing outsourced and contracted relationships: the traditional approach and the partnering approach. There are some key differences between these two approaches. The traditional approach is also called the master-slave approach. The contracting is normally for a one-time project. There is a lack of trust between project managers' organization and their contractors. Each party's goals and objectives are different and tailored to what is best for themselves. The project team and contractors are independent and spatially separated with managed interactions. Communications are structured and guarded. Critique objectivity is limited due to lack of interest, fear of reprisal, and lack of continuous improvement incentive. The organization and the contractors don't have much access to each other's resources. Project involvement is normally limited to project-level personnel, and no involvement of other staff in the organization. Risk is transferred from the organization to the contractors. By contrast, the partnering approach to managing contracted relationships focuses on building mutual trust, long-term commitment, and collaboration. All parties work together as partners and share the ultimate goal of a successful project. The project involves a joint project team with high level of interactions. Open communications among team members avoid misdirection and enhance effective working relationships. Objective critique stimulates candid assessment of work performance. Partners have access to each other's organizational resources. There is a total company involvement instead of just the project personnel. Partners try to be considerate and understanding. Risk is shared jointly among the partners, which also encourage innovation and continuous improvement. It typically requires a significant amount of time and energy to build and sustain collaborative relations among all parties in project outsourcing. Some best practices will be explained in the next few minutes. Successful firms are very careful in selecting the work to be outsourced. They often choose to contract only work with clearly defined requirements or expectations on the final deliverables with measurable outcomes. Not only do requirements have to be spelled out, but extra care has to be taken to ensure that requirements are understood. Communicating requirements can be troublesome, especially with foreign project outsourcing. There is not only language barriers, but also cultural differences. Watch these two short videos. The first video is a funny commercial. The second video is from the movie Outsourced. It tells the story of an American manager who is sent to India to oversee a group of customer service representatives. Outsourcing companies need to realize that not everyone you communicate with shares your assumption. What is obvious to you is not necessarily obvious to your partner, and vice versa. A contract is legally binding in the United States, but in some other countries, it's just a suggestion. Your contractors may have a basic understanding of each word you say, but not completely clear on the exact meaning of the message you are trying to convey. Common procedures and terminologies need to be established to minimize misunderstanding when different parties are working together. It's a good practice to document your requirements. Follow up your conversations in writing. People understand written language better than spoken language. You can confirm your requirements by requesting a prototype to ensure that your needs are positively understood. Set deadlines and checkpoints to monitor the project progress. Also, emphasize the importance of meeting deadlines. Successful outsourcing needs extensive training and team-building activities. In many cases, firms find it useful to hire an outside consultant to design and facilitate the sessions. Such a consultant is typically knowledgeable in interorganizational team building. The team building sessions often lead to the creation of a partnering charter signed off by all the participants. This charter states their common goals for the project as well as the procedures that will be used to achieve these goals. Note that the partnering charter is different from the project charter we introduced in the previous video. The project charter is a document issued by top management authorizing the project manager to initiate and lead the project. Escalation is a primary control mechanism for dealing with and resolving problems. The basic principle is that problems should be resolved at the lowest level within a set time limit, say 24 hours. Otherwise, they will be escalated to the next higher level of management. This policy contributes to quick problem solving and discourages delaying decisions. Management discourages subordinates from passing up problems that the subordinates should have resolved. Another best practice for outsourcing is to perform frequent reviews and status updates. More and more companies are using web-based online surveys to collect data from all project participants about the quality of working relations. The real questions can be related to communications, top management support, and responses to issues and concerns about all the aspects of the outsourced project. Survey results will be reviewed and used for monitoring progress and identifying potential problems in interorganizational relations. One of the best ways to overcome interorganizational friction is to have people from each organization working side by side on the project. Smart companies rent or make available the necessary accommodations so that all key project personnel can work collectively together. This allows a high degree of face-to-face interaction needed to coordinate activities, solve difficult problems, and form a common bond. Co-location is critical and well worth the added expense. This is especially relevant for complex projects in which close collaboration from different parties is required to be successful. When co-location is not practically possible, the travel budget for the project should contain ample funds to support timely travel to different organizations. Co-location is less relevant for independent work that does not require ongoing coordination between professionals from different organizations. When negotiating contracts, the goal is to reach a fair deal for all parties involved. Cohesion and cooperation is undermined if one party feels he or she is being unfairly treated by others. Negotiating to reach the lowest price can come back to haunt project managers with shoddy work. Performance-based contracts are becoming increasingly popular. They establish significant incentives and penalties based on priorities of the project. For example, if time is critical, then contractors receive bonuses for beating deadlines and get penalized for missing the deadlines. The average large corporation is involved in around 30 partners today versus fewer than 3 in the early 1990s. This is due to the fact that products are getting more and more complex. For example, a smartphone is not just a phone now. It's also a GPS, a camera, an MP3 player, a movie player, a video game console, a radio, a flashlight, a voice recorder, a digital watch, and a health monitor. More components means more partners. Long-term partnering relationships will generate major benefits toward business growth and success. For example, a long-term partnership will eliminate the need and cost associated with bidding and selecting a contractor. As partners gain experience with each other, they develop a common language and perspective, which improves communication, reduces misunderstanding, and enhances collaboration. Long-term partnership encourages innovation. The partners are able to discuss innovation and associated risks in a more open manner to share risks and rewards fairly. Long-term partnership also improves overall performance. Partners become more familiar with each other's standards and expectations and are able to apply lessons learned from previous projects to current projects. Effective negotiation is critical to successful collaboration. Project managers must negotiate support and funding from top management. They must negotiate staff and technical input from functional managers. They must coordinate with other project managers and negotiate project priorities and shared resources. They must negotiate within their project team to determine assignments, deadlines, standards, and priorities. Project managers must negotiate prices and standards with vendors and suppliers. A firm understanding of the negotiation process, skills, and tactics is essential to project success. People working on the project, whether they represent different companies or departments within the same organization, are not enemies or competitors, but rather allies or partners. Project managers need to realize that project management is not a contest. Although the parties within the alliance may have different priorities and standards, they are bounded by the success of the same project. If conflicts escalate to the point where negotiations break down and the project comes to a halt, then everyone loses. Negotiation is more of an art than a science. It's a two-part process. The first part deals with reaching an agreement, and the second part is the implementation of that agreement. The implementation phase determines the success of negotiation. If one party feels bullied or tricked into doing something, this feeling will be reflected by half-hearted performance. Experienced project managers use an approach called principled negotiation to develop win-win solutions while protecting themselves against those who would take advantage of their forthrightness. Principled negotiation is based on several key points, which we will discuss next. The first point is focusing on common interests. Not only should you be driven by your own interests, but you should try to identify the interests of the other party. You may hear this kind of conversations between a project manager and a contractor. I'm willing to pay $10,000. No, it will cost $15,000. Or, I need it by Monday. That's impossible. We can't have it ready until Friday. These conversations create a win-lose scenario in which if one party wins, the other party must lose. If the project manager uses the principled negotiation, he or she may ask why it will cost so much or why it can't be done by Monday. Don't just say that it's critical that it be done by Monday. Explain what will happen if it's not done by Monday. Seek first to understand, then to be understood. This is the idea of empathetic listening. For example, the project manager needs the prototypes on Monday to demonstrate to a potential group of customers. The contractor says it's impossible. However, when the project manager reviews that the purpose of the demonstration is to see customers' reactions to the color and shape of the prototypes, not the functions of the finished products, then the conflicts between the project manager and the contractor may disappear. The contractor may tell the project manager that the prototypes will be ready early Monday. Once the individuals involved have identified their interests, then they can explore options for mutual gain. What is required is collaborative brainstorming in which people work together to solve the problem in a way that will change a win-lose situation to a win-win agreement. For example, when negotiating the contract price, the project manager may identify options that are of low cost to them but of high interest to the contractor. This is only possible if each party knows what the other's needs are. The project manager may have learned from the discussion that the contractor was in a tight cash flow after purchasing a very expensive tool, and needing cash is a priority. During the brainstorming session, one of the options presented was to prepay for the order instead of the usual payment after delivery. Both parties found this option attractive and rapidly reached an agreement in which the project manager would pay the contractor for the entire job in advance, in exchange for a faster turnaround time and a significant price reduction. Another key point of principled negotiation is to separate the people from the problem. We have seen too often that instead of attacking the problem, people attack each other. Once people feel attacked or threatened, their energy naturally goes to defending themselves and not to solving the problem. One angry attack produces an angry counterattack, and the discussion quickly escalates into a heated argument, causing an emotional chain reaction. When adopting principled negotiation, partners should be hard on the problem, soft on the people. Principled negotiation uses objective criteria when possible to address disagreements. Most established industries and professions have developed standards and rules to help deal with common areas of dispute. For example, both buyers and sellers rely on the Kelly Blue Book, or KBB, to establish prices for used cars. Whenever possible, you should insist on using external, objective criteria to settle disagreements. Although most people working in projects realize that, in the long run, it's beneficial to work toward mutually satisfying solutions, occasionally you may still encounter someone who has dominant win-lose attitude about life and work. This principled negotiation approach will fail in these cases. In a bestseller titled Getting to Yes, Negotiating Agreement Without Giving In, Roger Fisher and William Ury set out some principles for dealing with unreasonable people. That is, when the other person begins to push, don't push back. As in the martial arts, avoid pitting your strengths against the others directly. Instead, use your skill to step aside and turn that person's strengths to your ends. When someone made an unreasonable demand, Neither reject it nor accept it. Treat it as a possible option and then look for the interest behind it. Ask questions instead of making statements. Questions allow for interest to surface and do not provide the opponent with something to attack. Use silence as a response if the other person attacks you personally. Wait for the other party to break the stalemate by coming up with a new suggestion. Fisher and Urey also suggest using a method called BATNA to deal with such situations. BATNA stands for Best Alternative to a Negotiated Agreement. Basically, your BATNA reflects how dependent you are on the other party. If you are negotiating price and delivery dates and can choose from a number of reputable suppliers, then you have a strong BATNA. If on the other hand, there is only one vendor who can supply you with specific critical material on time, then you have a weak BATNA. Watch this video to learn more about BATNA. The ultimate project success is not only determined by whether the project was completed on time, within budget, or according to specifications, but also whether the customer is satisfied with what has been accomplished. Customer satisfaction is the bottom line. A customer may be dissatisfied with a project that was completed ahead of schedule and under budget if he thought the work was poor quality and that his fears and concerns were not adequately addressed. Conversely, a customer may be very satisfied with a project that was over budget and behind schedule if she felt the project team protected her interests and did the best job possible under adverse circumstances. The negative effect of dissatisfied customers on a firm's reputation is far greater than the positive effect of satisfied customers. Bad news travels faster and farther than good news. For every happy customer who shares his satisfaction regarding a particular product or service with another person, a dissatisfied customer is likely to share her dissatisfaction with 10 other people. Customer satisfaction can be measured in terms of met expectation. It's equal to the perceived performance divided by expected performance. When performance falls short of expectations, then the ratio is less than 1, and the customer is dissatisfied. If the performance matches the expectations, then the ratio is equal to 1, and the customer is satisfied. If the performance exceeds expectations, then the ratio is greater than 1, and the customer is oversatisfied. Significantly exceeding expectations typically entails additional costs. The most profitable arrangement occurs when the customer's expectations are only slightly exceeded. For example, completing a construction project 2 months ahead of schedule may involve significant overtime expenses. Similarly, exceeding reliability requirements for a new electronic component may involve considerably more design and debugging effort. Therefore, should strive for a satisfaction ratio of 1.05, not 1.5. Project managers must be skilled at managing customer expectations and perceptions. A proactive approach is to shape the proper expectations up front. Experienced project managers have been known to lower customer expectations by underselling projects. If the estimated completion time is 10 to 12 weeks, they will promise to have the project completed within 12 to 14 weeks, therefore increasing the chances of exceeding customer expectations by getting the project completed early. More and more organizations and their project managers are treating their customers as de facto members of the project team and are actively involving them in key aspects of the project. Active customer involvement also provides a firm basis for assessing project performance. The customer not only sees the results of the project, but also acquires a glimpse of the effort and actions that produced those results. The project team should speak with one voice when communicating with customers. Nothing erodes confidence in a project more than for a customer to receive conflicting messages from different project members. Also, when communicating with customers, it's better to speak the language of the customers and avoid technical jargon that exceeds the customer's vocabulary. Successful project managers double as clients' colleagues. Instead of maintaining a clear, defined relationship with a client, they blend in and try to become part of the client organization. They attempt to dress like the client, act like the client, and participate in the client organization's activities like social gatherings, blood drives, retirement parties, etc. This helps establish a degree of trust that is essential for effective collaboration and partnering. In summary, we talked about the advantages and disadvantages of project outsourcing, described the basic elements of a request for proposal, discussed principled negotiation techniques, and learned how to manage customer relations. This is Wang. I'll see you in the next video.